So Stefan is the VP of Digital Sport at Nike and the author of the new book, almost new, out Thursday, Velocity, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Stefan is basically the software guy at a hardware company. Very plush, comfortable hardware, but hardware nonetheless. It's footwear, you can call it, W-A-R-E. And I want to start, you've been at Nike for 15 years. And the last 10 years especially all about digital. And I'm curious how, we were talking about this yesterday, how the Nike experience with customers used to be one where you kind of have the ads and the marketing and you convince the customer to buy a product, and that's the end of the relationship until next year. But the whole idea of digital and the idea that you're behind in digital is to start the experience with the purchase, to create a digital environment that starts there. And I'm curious how that fits in at Nike. I mean, this behemoth company that does so much about shoes, but conceivably not so much about digital.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, we're a company about people and consumers and understanding consumers and athletes. And when you do that, and when you try to play a relevant role in their lives, footwear is obviously one thing we're spending an enormous amount of time researching and understanding. But the opportunity that's presenting itself right now is completely different in that the relationships we have, and this is something we've learned from Nike Plus early on, are so much more impactful. When someone comes back to the brand 2 or 3 times a week to sync a run, versus what it used to be, which was convince someone that we had something amazing, which we do. Then you buy it and you have a great experience with a product, but we don't know anything about that experience. We don't know how you use it, why you use it, what you like about it, and what you don't like about it. And right now, we're in a completely new era where technology just unlocks something unprecedented.
So you mentioned Nike Plus. Nike Plus was this, it started in 2006, right?
Yeah.
It's a collaboration between Nike and Apple. And in your book, you have this great moment where you're at a meeting with Steve Jobs, and Jobs was talking about how he thought that Apple was going to handle the engineering and Nike was going to handle the marketing.
Yeah.
But that is not actually how it turned out. I mean, it was more fluid than that.
Yeah, and that's how it started. I think that because people view Nike a certain way, like an amazing consumer company, but focused on marketing and great products. And I think this notion that we actually understood engineering and how to use software to create services that are indispensable to people was new to a lot of people. But the relationship was structured that way in that Apple are amazing engineers and they delivered the hardware at the time. But when we built out the service, NikePlus.com, the first time, I think it was great to see the team at Apple and Jobs' reaction to that being, wow, this was just not what we had expected you to do. So that was great.
And I should have mentioned Nike Plus is basically an accelerometer, right? That's the hardware. The secret kind of node inside there is the accelerometer, and that would fit inside your shoe. It still does fit inside your shoe. And then the software is kind of how you track the environment in which what you do with all that information that it's gathering about your movement and your speed and everything.
Right. It started off as this the sensor in your shoe that connected through radio with a little receiver that you clicked into your Nano. Because at the time, we didn't have the ecosystems we have. And then we created, once you plugged in your Nano, the data was synced through iTunes with NikePlus.com, and that's how we made the whole experience come to life.
Now that was one of the first, at least on my radar, it was one of the first moments where a big company created a consumer device that allows tracking of movement, and it was focused on running. It was kind of tied into running shoes. You had to have the shoes on, but it was really this kind of moment when all of a sudden it was quite, I mean, at Wired we keep on calling it living by numbers. It's this way where all of a sudden the data that you're generating through day-to-day life becomes evident and tangible and something you can actually use and respond to, and that's a very profound shift to make people conscious of that what they're doing with their lives like that.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. We have this saying, you know, you can't improve what you can't measure. And it's been amazing working with athletes, pro athletes, for 4 decades, seeing them come to campus, go into our labs, and all the equipment we have to test, measure, see how they're doing, the biomechanics experts that can break that down. All that was for the purpose of, in the beginning, creating better shoes, creating better apparel, but from all we understand from these athletes and how they move. And then you quickly realize what a benefit they have to all this information and how it helps them excel. You know, and then but you look at sensors and you look at what's going on today. We said, well, why wouldn't we take all this knowledge, all this information, and give it back and put it in the hands of every consumer in the world? You know, we say we bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world, and then it has a little asterisk and it said, if you have a body, you're an athlete. And I think that there's that opportunity to take something that was exclusive and elite and bring it to everyone is incredibly powerful. And data just becomes information that leads to knowledge, and at the end of the day, that becomes motivation. And that creates an incredibly interesting cycle. Just because you have that information and you know so much more about yourself, you're able to stay motivated in a way you've never been able to before.
Right. So it's I mean, when we wrote about it in Wired, we brought up the Hawthorne effect, which is this great kind of observation of science on how when you measure people and when people know they're being measured, when they know they're being monitored, there's this tendency to actually perform differently or perform more consciously. So it's tied to this factory back in the 1920s where they were trying to measure how many basically widgets, electrical widgets they made. And when they turned the lights on, people would make more widgets, and when they turned the lights off, people would make more widgets because they thought the experiment was going on both times. So that Hawthorne effect is something that keys in with Nike Plus and all these self-monitoring devices because people are all of a sudden aware of their own actions, and that is you know, in and of itself, just that awareness is this powerful catalyst. It's incredible.
I mean, when you think about it, we always start by trying to understand people, what motivates people, and what propels us. And when you look at it, you got to look at it through the lens of least amount of uncomfortable change.
Because uncomfortable change.
Least amount of uncomfortable change. Because if you go after something and you say, okay, we want you to go from being completely inactive to run a marathon. No one is going to be able to do that. But if you make it in small increments and you give someone the opportunity to track that. So, for instance, the Fuel Band that we launched in January here in New York is another very simple way to have something, a device, where you set yourself a daily goal and you track your progress against it, but you don't make it this massive change. You just say, just be a little bit more active. And that ties back to the Hawthorne effect, because now you have the ability through your phone, you sync it wirelessly through Bluetooth, and then you see how your friends are doing. And you have this sense of, there's a sense of community, there's a sense of goal, but you also have this notion that, you know, in a positive way, there's a nudge that keeps you going. So I think just that the fact that you have that makes it much more powerful.
Right. So the Fuel Band, Chris has it on, I have it on. There are about 8 of us at Wired now who have gotten them. They're hard to come by, but they're what is so cool about them, or kind of compelling, is that they're not tracking everything. Right. They're not giving you this plethora of metrics and charts and graphs, and there are those tools that will do that. There are tools that, again, they're accelerometer based, but there are tools that will kind of let you track with GPS, and they kind of build other sensors in there. But you guys have very deliberately made it a very simple and not kind of overwhelming amount of data that's coming at the user.
Yeah, it comes back to respect the human being and don't let technology lead. Let the experience lead. And I think if you try to pack all the technology into something, you'll get something that's really bulky, really complicated, really complex, and actually measures a bunch of things that you don't necessarily need. We're trying to as Chris said earlier today, you know, let this do what it's good at doing. Just let me track how active I am during the day. The phone does a bunch of amazing things. Let the phone do that, but it needs to be unintrusive, because when you work with athletes, you find out that they just want zero distraction. You can't have that. You can't have something that you think about wearing. And really, one of the hardest things, I think, is to say no, to edit away and say, yeah, it could do all these things, but what's the most interesting thing that is the least intrusive thing that you could have that still helps you get to where you need to get to? And then you tap into the back end, the incredibly powerful social back end, just that Bluetooth enables. So, you know, you connect the band to the phone to the world, to everyone you care about, and all of a sudden you have an ecosystem of services that is indispensable.
Right, you can compete with friends and things like that. So it tracks calories and steps, and then there's this metric that you guys invented called fuel points.
Yeah.
Or fuel.
Nike Fuel. Yeah.
Nike Fuel. Got to get the branding right.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting unit because it's in the thousands. Well, actually, you got a video about it that describes it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We can. Let's run the video, and then I can talk to how we got to it.
Runners, walkers, basketball players, or breakdancers. They all have one thing in common: Nike Fuel, the ultimate measure of activity, of sport, of commitment, of your entire athletic life, telling you more about yourself than you ever knew before. It isn't bought or sold, it's earned. From the moment you start moving, the more you move, the more you earn. Fuel is calculated the same way for everyone. So whoever you are and however you move, we're all connected. Connected by Nike Fuel.
So what I think is fascinating about that is it's a completely new number that, I mean, so that video is ostensibly to kind of elucidate what it represents, but it doesn't represent anything. I mean, it represents certain things, right? Movement and things like that. But it's a metric that doesn't translate as this is the number of steps I'm taking, or this is the amount of calories I've burned. It's just a new notion that you guys, I guess, have decided is the ultimate simple target, because you want to get to 2,000 or 3,000 fuel points for your daily expenditure.
Yeah, we found this came from working with running and runners. Where this started was, you see this incredible power in measuring how you're doing, right? And if you're running, you care about how far you ran, or how fast you ran, or how often you ran. But when you look across, there aren't that many things that allow you to compare with other sports. So each sport has its thing. And we spent a lot of time thinking about this, and sort of said that if there was a currency that could unite all athletic activity, there's an incredible power in that. And calories are great, but they're based upon consumption. What do you consume? What do you burn? And they're oftentimes correlated with weight loss. And we're more about, stay active, be active. And we spent a ton of time researching this. We worked with ASU, Arizona State. We worked with leading scientists that could correlate accelerometry with oxygen consumption, to be able to give a measure that wasn't just made up. Because one of the biggest hurdles is you introduce a currency and you call it Nike Fuel. The first thing people are going to go, well, why would I care about that? Why would that be interesting to me? Is this just a branding thing or a marketing thing? We spent an enormous amount of time understanding the body in motion, and through accelerometry, correlating that with oxygen kinetics. How active are you? And the best way of measuring activity is oxygen kinetics. When you do that, you can see from sitting down to working at an office or being in school to walking, jogging, running, sprinting. There's a very distinct correlation between how you move and how much oxygen you consume. And through those, we were able to correlate and provide the same number based upon how hard you work to everyone.
Yeah.
And that then became Nike Fuel. But the reason it's important is you want to have something that makes it possible, whatever you do and whatever your sport is, to compare, compete, challenge with every athlete in the world. And what's really, really fascinating is how quickly a number that was completely unknown becomes a reference point. So you and I talked about it yesterday. The first thing you ask someone, you set yourself a daily goal on the fuel band, and then you try to hit it. And the band resets at midnight every night. But everyone have their goal. And pretty quickly, that a a 5,000-6,000 day is a really good day. And it's something you didn't know, but only after a couple of days of using it, it becomes this reference point to aspire to. And I think is we're really happy with how quickly it gets adopted as a measure of activity.
So one of the things that I think is cool about it as well is it takes it away, and you were touching on this, it takes it away from any specific athletic activity. It becomes a way for people to engage in their lives without thinking, okay, I am a runner or I am a cyclist, or I mean, you want to be active, but it's not necessarily putting somebody in one of these buckets, these sport-specific buckets, which was when Nike started. I think it was about 10 years ago. You guys had this tracking program online for runners. It was not Nike Plus, but it was before that. And I thought it was awesome, but it didn't. I run only because I have to. I loathe it as an activity, but
really,
whatever. I like to ride a bike, but it's so. Without being a runner, without identifying as a runner, I couldn't engage in that. And so this actually breaks away from that. And it's interesting to me that you've kind of created a metric that does get you away from one specific activity.
Yeah. No, and what's interesting is a lot of people look at us and say, we're obviously a sports brand first and foremost, and we work with amazing athletes. And traditionally we would come at it, if you look at a pyramid of activity where the professionals at the top, and then you kind of, all of us, or many of us kind of aspire to that. And when we create product for that athlete because they have the most discerning, their needs are such that all of us can benefit from it. And we do products for that. We have some amazing things coming out for the Olympics where we do pressure sensing in your shoe. We can tell you if you wear a basketball shoe, how high you jump, and so on and so forth. But what's interesting with the Fuel Band, to your point, is you kind of want to broaden it. We're all about the more people move, the better it is. So if we have products that can inspire and enable everyone to be more active, then that's great. We will always keep the most authentic products for the most elite athletes as a part of our portfolio, but we just think it's more interesting and a more dynamic brand if it can be relevant to everyone.
Right. So I want to just touch on the book because it's out, comes out in, you're flying from here to London for the book release party, and it's a compelling book because it captures a lot of the stuff you've learned at Nike, and is all about kind of this advent of metrics and digitization of life in general, and how we can best optimize our lives based on those tools. And I wondered if kind of you can give us a little sample of that.
Yeah, the book is called Velocity, and I've co-authored it with Ajaz Ahmed, who's the chairman of AKQA. And we started this project a few years ago, just from sitting like this talking, and we said, it's amazing. We've had the fortune, he and I, to work together for over 12 years. And we were looking at digital and technology and how amazing it is, and how it's such a power that you can create so much interesting benefits for consumers, for people from. But really, there wasn't that much going on that got it right. We always come back to, we love Apple, right? Because they've figured out a really good way of serving their consumer. But then there were all these other great, amazing companies out there that for some reason struggled with what seemed to be, as an approach, not so complex. So we said, what if we could take our learnings, Ajaz's and mine learnings, and just put them in the book? And it ended up being, the seven laws for a world, the 7 new laws for a world gone digital. And all we do is sort of say there are some filters or parameters that I use every day in my work at Nike in trying to use digital in a smart way that helps people get better, and the way Ajaz uses it. And we just put our thoughts in this, and it's been a really, really interesting experiment to pull this together.
Yeah, it's a great read. Okay, we're going to take a couple questions. And if you have a question, raise your hand, and the microphone will come hither to you. We have one question from Twitter here. What do you say to people who respond, why would I share that? So this is a big issue in terms of sharing and privacy and people kind of divulging their information. So okay, I'm tracking this, but why would I want to share it with my friends on Facebook?
It's a really, really important question, and we're very careful with how we treat. We make sure that privacy is first and foremost your decision. It's your call. Nothing is shared unless you want to. But if you're asking why would I, it is if you feel comfortable with it. There's an inherent power, and you can select in which and how wide a circle you want to share something. It could be with your closest friends. It could be with everyone. Different people have different different ways of thinking about that. But it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, about motivation. You know, because it's one thing when you go out and you're active and you're doing it by yourself. It's so much more powerful when you have friends. When you do it with people you care about, it is a completely different level of engagement. When you have a shared goal, and there are a number of those, there's a bigger reason to share your, you know, your progress or your activity because that's the benefit that comes back for you. We never start with share it because of Nike's benefit or share it so that we could sell it or pass it on. It is never about that. It's about you. And if we bring value to you because you have a good experience, ultimately, you know, it's going to reflect well on what we provide as a brand.
But the data is showing Nike some cool stuff. I remember from the Nike Plus data that you guys found out that more people run on Sunday than any other day.
Yeah.
And you found out that if people use these trackers 5 times, they're basically hooked.
Yeah.
So once you get locked into 5 uses, you're going to adopt it. Which is fascinating to think about why that it takes that number, that's the magic threshold.
Well, I mean, I think it comes back to this notion of recognition. When you start to feel like, we had this when we just launched running, and there were a couple of people that were skeptics, and they said, you know, I don't know, why would I do this? This is not authentic, you know, and the music came into the picture, and we said, well, if you start getting credit for your activity and for what you do, you almost feel cheated. So if you now go out and I can guarantee you this, once you start, you know, whatever tracking mechanism you use and whatever brand you use, it's really hard to go in and do a workout or go for a run or a bike ride and miss out on that credit. You kind of want that. We're driven by recognition as humans. And I think that when you start getting that, that is an incredible power that I think is hard to stop once you've started it.
Yeah. All right. Yes, we have a couple over here. There's one, I think, right in the second row.
We'll give out a nice prize to the best question.
Oh yes, we have a door prize.
Are you going to open up your platform so that other applications can be written based on the data that accelerometers are creating? So moving to platform rather than package?
Great, really good question. Yeah, there is absolutely, and I think as many of you know, in the beginning people view open as, you know, why don't you just open up? And but open means an enormous amount of work to make sure that you have a really, really robust and well architected platform in order to do that in a sustainable manner. Everything from, you know, developer relations to the SDKs we provide in the APIs. We want to make sure that we have all that in a really, really good shape. And once we do, we are definitely opening up. I think that's one of the powers. We know a lot about sports, but there are people out there that know way more about us, about what can make this an enjoyable experience. So that is absolutely coming and in the near future, and I think that it'll be a lot of fun for people that are interested in taking activity data and do things with it that we've never imagined.
And who owns the data?
The consumer owns the data. There is no reason for us to sit here and hoard and collect all this. The only reason someone has benefit from the data is because they use it as a way to get better. Mm-hmm. And all we're doing is channeling that, providing it, and putting services back that is of use to someone.
I think we had another question a few rows back. Did I lose them?
Hi. I know you had a hackathon event at South by Southwest this year. Can you talk about some of the developer hacks that came out of that and what other platforms they mashed up the Nike Fuel band with?
Yeah, it was really interesting, you know, and I think it was one of those that wasn't too expected by Nike to participate in a hackathon, but we loved it. We had partnered with Apogee, and we went there and gave a group of hackers access to our APIs and just said, hey, do something with it. You know, they had, I think, 5 hours to work on it. The hacks that came back were really interesting. They took music, combined it with Fuel Band, and just tried to figure out how to enhance the app and make it more interesting. We picked out the best team actually and invited them up to campus because you know it's an incredibly inspiring community to work with. You know, it's hard in 5 or 6 hours to come up with a complete revolution and an approach to this. You need a little bit more time with it. But as an experiment, it was phenomenal for us. And I think that community really enjoyed access to these tools, you know, following the opportunity to do more with this data.
All right, so you have a question. We are able to give away one Nike Fuel Band, and there's a question that whoever gets it first.
Yeah, I didn't know if there would be any questions, so I thought I'll throw one out to see if I can. There is a feature on Nike Plus Running called the Power Song. Is anyone familiar with the Power Song? It's very simple. Yeah, that's great. So on your phone or on your iPod, you select the song that really keeps you going. When you run out of steam, and you just hold down the button for 2 seconds, it kicks in that particular song and gets you, over the hump or up the hill or what it might be. So it's interesting, we've tracked over the 6 years, almost 6 years we've been working on this, what those songs are. And it's really, really interesting what comes back. So whoever knows what in the world is the most powerful power song will get a Fuel Band. Raise your hand.
All right, just shout out.
Eye of the Tiger. Eye of the Tiger!
Who said that?
Who said that? All right, congratulations.
So if somebody can grab his business card, then he will be able to be experience the thrill of the fight all the time. Stefan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.